Hello, I'm Ollie and this is CriminOlly, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, my thoughts on Goodreads' beloved backlist books. So a while ago I made a video where I went through Goodreads' most popular horror books of the last 5 years or so. Someone in the comments suggested they'd like to see me do more videos like this, so I found another list on Goodreads. This one is of beloved backlist books. So this is books that have been out for a while that have consistently had a 4-star or higher rating on Goodreads. And when I went through the list, there are a lot of books on the list that I haven't read. So there's 99 books in total. There are a lot I haven't read, but there are also quite a lot I have read. And they're probably the kind of books that people don't imagine me reading. They're not the kind of books I typically talk about on the channel. So I thought it might be fun to go through the list with you and talk about each of the books that I have read and give you my thoughts on it. Okay, so I've got my laptop, I've got the list up, so let's go through it together. As I said, there are a load of these books that I've read, more than I probably would have expected. So let me go through them with you. So it's split into different sections. So first up, we have historical fiction. So historical fiction, probably not something I read that much of, but there are a few here I've read. So two, as you can see at the top here, by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So I actually really like Taylor Jenkins Reid. I think I've read at least one other book by her, and I've found all of her books to be just pure enjoyment, really. They're just fun. She does great characters, and you really get into their lives and the story. It's kind of the classic kind of storytelling that I think of when I think about writers like Harold Robbins or someone like that, people who are really popular in kind of the 60s and 70s. That kind of very character-based book where the character goes on a real journey as they progress through the story. So yeah, Taylor Jenkins Reid I do like. I think of these two, my favourite was probably The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I just thought the way she worked through that story and you know, introduced the different characters was really, really well done. And I really liked the themes of that book as well. Daisy Jones and the Six I really enjoyed too, but not quite as much as Evelyn Hugo. Scrolling down then, so Pachinko I do think I've got a copy of, but I haven't read that one yet. Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus I have read, and I really enjoyed it. I just thought it was a funny, sweet, entertaining book. It was one of those books where I felt like the talking dog, for example, that's in it could have been annoying, but actually I thought Bonnie Garmus handled it really well. And it was just kind of a satisfying read. It's always really nice seeing a character that you're rooting for going up against the establishment and winning. Yeah, Lessons in Chemistry I enjoyed a lot. Elephant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. I read this a good few years ago now, probably the year it came out. And I remember really enjoying it. I remember Eleanor being a fascinating central character, and I really enjoyed the kind of the mystery of what's happened to her. So another one that I thought was really good. Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. I also really enjoyed. So another kind of literary fiction book, but one where I thought the character work was excellent, and I really felt, you know, kind of pulled into the lives of the people I was reading about. And that is also very, very much true of A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. So a really deeply troubling book, a very sad book, probably one of the saddest, most emotional books I've ever read. And people have asked me if I, consider it to be a disturbing book. And certainly there is a lot in this book that is very disturbing. But more than anything, I think it's a sad book. It's just so heartbreaking. But yeah, a really excellent book, and a book that manages to justify its length as well. Next then we have On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. So I read this, I think, not long after starting the channel. And I'm going to be honest, of all the books we've talked about so far, this is the one I remember least about. I remember vague snippets of it. I remember it's about an Asian immigrant to the States. I think it's like second generation. I think his parents came over from Vietnam. And it's about his life and his kind of discovering his sexuality and things like that. But I don't remember an awful lot more about it than that. I do remember that I enjoyed it. I remember thinking it was a good book when I'd finished it. But it's clearly not a book that's left much of an impression on me. Moving in then to mystery and thriller. So you might expect there to be more books that I've read in this section, but I'm not actually sure that that's true. So as you can see, I haven't read any of the top 6. Now we get into one I have read. So Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby, which I think is a phenomenally good thriller. Still my favourite S.A. Cosby book. I really think it's great. It's gripping, it's emotional. You've got that great relationship between the two central characters. So if you don't know, this is a book about two guys who are both, kind of fairly straightforward guys, reasonably bigoted, in fact. Their sons were lovers and their sons were killed in a homophobic attack. And it's about these two guys who are very different from each other getting together to get revenge, basically. It's really gripping. It's really good. It's just an excellent, excellent thriller. And that is the only one of the mystery and thriller books I've read. I have read other books by Riley Sager and didn't particularly like them. I think I've got the only one left digitally, but yeah, I haven't read it yet. Next up, so we're into fantasy. So I'm not a big fantasy fan, certainly not a fan of epic fantasy, albeit there doesn't seem to be that much kind of epic fantasy in this list. So let's go through and talk about the ones I have read. So I've read Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. I read this for a book club I was part of a few years ago. I thought this was great. I thought this was a really interesting book. Just one of those books that's slightly hypnotic in terms of the weirdness of it all, but it manages to create a world that really works. So yeah, a fascinating book. A book I will probably read again at some point. I remember it being quite a quick read, but definitely a book I enjoyed enormously. Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. I was not a huge fan of this book. I know everyone loves this book, but I just found I didn't really engage with it that much. I found it almost like too low stakes. So I love the concept of it, and I was really looking forward to reading it going into it. But yeah, it just didn't really work for me. I can see why people liked it, but I didn't love it. Next, we're into science fiction. So you can see I've got an unfinished one here, and quite a few that I have read as well. So Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, I thought was really, really good. I thought without wanting to spoil things, the relationship between the two central characters was excellent. I really liked the way it wrapped up at the end. So if you don't know, this is about a guy who's sent alone into space to go on a mission to save the planet, basically. But it's really, really good. The one flaw I thought this book had was that the central character is so similar to the central character in The Martian that it almost felt like a weird sequel to The Martian. So it was really, really enjoyable, but I do worry a bit that Andy Weir may end up being something of a one-trick pony in terms of his characters. We shall see. The fifth season by N.K. Jemisin. Everyone loves this book, but I just couldn't get on with it. I've tried to read it twice, and I just found it too heavy in terms of the world building and things like that. A book where you have to spend time figuring out what's going on, and I'm too lazy a reader for books like that. Dark Matter by Blake Crouch, which is a really enjoyable kind of what's the word I'm looking for, like multiverse thriller. I thought this was really fun. I really enjoyed it a lot. I liked it so much I gave my dad a copy for Christmas one year. So yeah, I thought that was a really propulsive, enjoyable read. I definitely liked it the most out of all the Blake Crouch books I've read. Station 11 by Emily St John Mandel, I thought was great. So this was a book, funnily enough, that my dad read first, and he really recommended it to me and my sister, and we both read it and really, really enjoyed it. So, a post-apocalyptic story, but a much gentler post-apocalyptic story than most, and just a wonderful depiction, I suppose, of what is important about humanity, the things that we should treasure and try to hang on to. Red Rising by Pierce Brown, haven't read. At some point I've obviously marked this as want to read. I'm not sure I want to read it anymore, so yeah, pretend you didn't see that. All Systems Red by Martha Wells, so the first of the Murderbot books. I really like this. I read this a few years ago. I reread it more recently, and I've read the I think books 2 and 3 in the Murderbot series as well. So just really fun, cynical sci-fi. So Murderbot is this kind of killbot, basically, so a security droid who is very, very sarcastic and cynical, and all Murderbot wants to do is just relax and watch soap operas, basically, but keeps on having to save the humans that they are assigned to protect. So really fun sci-fi. Next up, The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. I've talked about this book a few times on the channel. I thought this was a really excellent book. I love Becky Chambers sci-fi. I've read all of her books. I think she's phenomenal. So this is a lovely kind of hopeful sci-fi story about a group of people on a mission to get to this other planet on a small craft, and just about their lives, really, their relationships. There's definitely science fiction in here, but more than anything, it's a book about humanity, albeit many of the characters are not human. They are aliens of various species. But yeah, a really excellent book. Next then, The Testaments by Margaret Atwood. So I thought that The Handmaid's Tale was an excellent book. Really, really excellent. I thought The Testaments felt like a bit of a cash grab, if I'm honest with you. I can see why she wrote it. It was at the time when The Handmaid's Tale TV show was out and everyone was, craving more. But I really thought The Testaments was a pale imitation, really, of A Handmaid's Tale, which I think is a truly excellent book. So yeah, didn't love that one. And no idea why it won I think it jointly won the Booker Prize, didn't it? And it definitely felt like that was a Lifetime Achievement Award rather than an award for that particular book. The one by John Myers I haven't read. I have read at least one other book by him, which I now forget the name of, but it's the one about self-driving cars, which I thought was okay, but not great. Okay, we get into romance now. I think we may find that I haven't read any of these, because when I do read romance, it tends to be kind of category romance, not the kind of thing that ends up in Goodreads lists. I have got, I think, a copy of Red, White and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston, so I probably will get round to reading that at some point. But yeah, gone through all of the romance books and haven't read any of those. Right, now we get into horror, so you can expect me to have read a few more of these at least. First up, The Institute by Stephen King. I didn't like The Institute. Definitely not one of my favourite King books. I like the concept. So the concept is a bit like the school in the X-Men, this school for like people with powers and things like that. So taps into a lot of similar themes to ones that King explored in Firestarter. I just felt like The Institute didn't really hang together very well as a book. And it's one of King's books where King does this thing in his books where he often has two stories. And the King books, I think, that work really well are the ones where the two stories, you don't realise there are two stories. In The Institute, there are very obviously two stories, and it feels like you're reading two separate books. Hidden Pictures by Jason Rekulak, I also didn't like. There's some stuff that's really good about this book, this concept. So it's about this like nanny who is living with this family, and the child that she's looking after keeps on drawing these really weird, creepy pictures, saying that they are like things he has seen, basically. So it's a good concept. You get to see the pictures in the book as well, and they are creepy. So that I thought was interesting. But overall, I just felt like, particularly towards the end, it got really like kind of cheesy and manipulative, and I really hated the ending. So I didn't like that at all. The Reformatory by Tananarive Dew, I haven't read yet. I do have a copy. I need to get to it. Bird Box by Josh Malerman, the only Josh Malerman book still that I've read, and I really need to sort that out. I thought this was really good. I thought it was a great central concept, really great creepy creatures. So the idea is that there are these creatures that have invaded the earth, and if you see them, you die, basically. So the central character, who's this woman who's trying to get her kids to safety, has to be blindfolded throughout the book. So just a really great concept, and I thought it was a really tense, enjoyable horror book as well. Lovecraft Country by Matt Ruff. I started and I didn't get on with it, but I definitely want to try it again because I've heard so many great things about that. Next one I've read then is Our Share of Night by Mariana Enriquez. I thought this was really great, a really excellent, sprawling political horror novel that managed to use the horror genre to reflect really interestingly on society. So set in Argentina, about kind of weird cults and things like that. But there's a lot in this book about kind of Argentine history and politics and things like that. I thought it was excellent. Monstrilio, I really, really need to read. I do have a copy of it. I need to get to it soon. Next up then we're into young adult. So you can see I've read at least one of these. So The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. I read a few years ago. I thought it was really good. So a gripping, interesting, involving YA book really good central characters. You really, felt like you were rooting for the people in the book. So I did enjoy that one. I don't know if I've read any of the other ones in YA. No, I haven't. Okay, into memoirs. So as you may know if you watch the channel, I don't read a lot of non-fiction or memoirs. There may well be none here that I've read. I do really want to read Doppelganger by Naomi Klein. That sounds very interesting to me. Yes, I haven't read any of those. And I think the same may be true of history and biography. Oh no, there's one that I've read. So Killers of the Flower Moon, I would like to read. That sounds like a really interesting book. And The Radium Girls I'd quite like to read as well, actually. The one I have read is The Spy and the Traitor by Ben Macintyre. So Ben Macintyre writes really interesting, like historical books, but they're very, very accessible. So he really draws you in as a reader. He portrays the people he's writing about in a really engaging and interesting way, and the stories that he tells are always interesting one. He picks his subjects very, very well. This one I think was the one about Kim Philby, which was really great. Those are the only ones I've read there. I do have a copy of The Wager, and I've heard great things about that, so would like to get to that at some point. General non-fiction then, I think, so there's one I've read here, I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara, which is a true crime book, but it's as much about the author's obsession with the crimes as it is about her, as it is about the actual crimes themselves. So a really excellent book, really fascinating. Michelle McNamara very sadly died, I think, before it was published. But it's really good. If you are interested in the concept of true crime, but like me, you maybe sometimes feel like it can be a little bit exploitative, this is a great book to read. And that is the full list. So there are definitely a few books on there that I haven't read yet that I would like to read. But those are my thoughts on the ones that I have read. So hope you enjoyed that. Let me know if there were any particular favourite books of yours in that list. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Hope you're safe and well out there. Hope you're reading good stuff. And I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.